All right, let the algorithm kick in a little bit more for everyone to kick on. Morning and welcome to the Mystical Mindset Roundtable. And today we have a guest. Shauna is with us today. And Shauna, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are?
My name is Shania, and I have an office in Minot, North Dakota. I do mediumship, tarot cards, healings, and also Reiki healing.
Right. Sherry, you want to introduce yourself for everyone too?
Certainly. I'm Sherry Huss, and I do mediumship as well. Tarot and oracle, shamanic prayer, and some runes.
And then I am Majestic Michelle, and I work with the Akashic Records to help people release the negative emotions trapped from trauma and within their heart space. And I love helping people this way. But today's subject is on events that shaped us. And I was talking to one of my clients, and we were just having this little chat, and I was like, wow, she made a comment about something that I said, and I was like, yeah, I didn't let that affect me. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go ahead and just talk about events that have shaped us, because we all have them, good and bad. And we're going to see if we can pull up a couple of ones that are negative that we had to work through, that we decided that was going to shape us, and ones that were positive that we decided at an early age that it was not going to affect us at all. So I'll go ahead and start out with one. So I was in kindergarten, and I stuttered a lot, to the point to where people didn't want to talk to me. I stuttered that much. And so it was really interesting. My kindergarten teacher back then decided that I was mentally disabled and told my parents that I had to do a class during the wintertime to help keep me in the learning so that I wouldn't lose things. Well, I get there, and I'm looking around. Everyone's in wheelchair. These are the kids who cannot speak. And I'm just looking at them thinking, really? This is going to help me retain my information? I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, even back then I was that aware of things that were happening. And I decided then that teachers didn't know beep about anything. And school was just something I had to do to get through. And it wasn't going to be fun. Needless to say, to this day, I do have a doctorate in metaphysics. So it was really interesting to go, yeah, I so did not let that affect me. But yet, did I really let it affect me? Because, and we can discuss this too, I know that our knowledge does not always come from books and what other people say. It comes by how we retain knowledge. So if I didn't go through that, would I have been on the path to even want to get a doctorate and to prove that I'm not mentally handicapped? So there's one of my stories, and we can discuss it if you two want to discuss it. If not, we can, if one of you two have another story you want to talk about first, we can do that. Sherry?
There's a couple of them. There are probably 5 or 6 different things that shaped my life. But the first one was, and I think a lot of people these days, unfortunately, can relate. I was very abused as a kid by my stepdad. And the way I handled it was I turned to prayer, and I used my faith to get me through it. And, another family member didn't fare as well because they chose other things to get through it. And it took them a lot longer, to handle it. But I have been able, because of all the things that have happened to me, I have been able to work with people now, and no judgment, no, I don't know. I guess hold space is the right way to say that. I hold space for people and let them tell their story. And I think that has become a very sacred journey for me. And if I wouldn't have been abused, if I would have had a little cookie cutter life, I don't think I would be as compassionate as I am today. And I'm grateful now, for the experience. I didn't like it at the time, but I mean, ultimately it helped me grow way stronger than that man ever thought I could. So I'm proud of that, I guess, as everyone should be.
And Shauna, what about your story?
I could kind of piggybacking off of Sherry there. As a child, I was also sexually abused by many people. And you're kind of drawn to the same type of people. So a couple of my best friends were also, sexually abused and whatever. And when I was about 10 years old, between 8 and 10, I suppose, my one girlfriend who had been continually sexually abused by her stepdad, the way she acted, her demeanor was just so different than mine. She was so depressed, and she was such a victim of life. And where I was trying to compare, what is the difference? Why does this affect her so much more negatively than it does me? And at that age, I realized that I was a survivor where she was a victim of life. It was all about our mindset. And also because of the household, the family that I grew up in, we were pretty much taking care of ourselves. We were in survival mode. So, my mentality was that. And so I just grew up being a survivor of all the BS that was going on, where I noticed that a lot of my other friends were victims of their lives, So, and now today, in my business and stuff, that's kind of, something that I try to practice and show people. You don't have to be a victim. You're a survivor. Look at all you've done and overcame. And so, yeah, that's one of my stories, I guess.
Awesome.
How
Thank you for
healers are
sharing.
born.
But I think we've all had those abuse stories in this group. I think a lot of us, that's what attracts us to all of this. Because if we can get through some of the biggest challenges, it actually shapes us to find our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get that. But yeah, I do understand too what you were saying, that when you're abused or not, you kind of find those people in the same area and with the same energy, especially as kids.
Yeah.
And then, as you grow and you mature and you realize some things, because I was one of those kids that I was always extremely positive about everything. But yet I had my heart chakra turned off a long time ago. And I know that now because of my childhood. I learned about law of attraction early on. And so I started doing that without including my heart.
Mm.
And then I realized, wait a minute, that does not work. Because you have to constantly work and work and work and work and work to keep it. But if you include your heart space into it, you don't have to work as hard to get it or to keep it. Mm-hmm. It just comes. And so I realized that as a teenager with the law of attraction. But yet some of the other stories that I know that have shaped me is that, again, when we go back to my kindergarten year, my teacher was really shaping me to not like school. And we had a coloring project in kindergarten. Granted, this was in the 70s, and you got graded on your coloring for penmanship. And I colored outside the lines. How dare I be a 5-year-old and coloring outside the lines, right? And she decided that she needed to have me stand up behind her and show me all the perfect coloring. And I find it kind of interesting because I still do not live my life inside the lines. Never have. And I definitely do not color and paint within lines when I do my artwork. Never have. So that was one of those things I'm going to show you, I'm not going to do anything within the lines. And I remember thinking that. And I was like, yep, that's been my life.
Have you ever ran into your kindergarten teacher as an adult?
No. She was pretty older back then. And we moved away from even that city when I was in second grade when we moved away. Because it was when we moved to the new school that the teachers there was like, oh, we need to get you in speech therapy to teach you how to speak and help fix and correct this. So yeah, no, I wouldn't even know where I don't even recall what she even looks like to even want to run into her.
Interesting.
Sherry, do you have another story?
Well, that brought up an interesting point, I think, because my other story would take too long. But when I was in kindergarten, I had this old lady, and God, I thought she was like 1,000 years old back then. And she had this big, tall beehive and those pointy cat glasses, very, very stern. I don't know why she was in kindergarten teaching, but I was left-handed, and all of my father's side are left-handers. They are all artists. They are all poets, sculptors, seamstresses. And I can remember her slapping my hand with a ruler every time I went to pick up the scissors with my left hand or whatever. And so I didn't fare very well with scissors and coloring inside the lines because they were forcing me to do it right-handed. And to this day, I still will often do things left-handed, not even thinking about it. But I wonder how much that stifled my creativity because I became more scientific. Like, I know this is like a stretch, okay? But honestly, with research nowadays, it makes me wonder. And I just, all of a sudden, I just kind of lost my interest in anything creative for a long time because I was so forced into being somebody that I wasn't. I thought there was something inherently wrong with me. It just makes me wonder. Because now I'm finally starting to, pick back up all of the stuff in my life that's artistic and creative. But it's taken me like 40 years.
Yeah,
it really
that's
does
really sad.
It is, yeah.
Is.
So
My mom told us stories like that too. When she was growing up, if you were left-handed, you'd get smacked with the ruler and, so on and so forth. And yeah, left-handers are the most creative. So
yeah.
Yeah. I think back then they were starting to do that conformatory thing. Like this is the way it is. This is the way you need to be. And when somebody came in that was different, they didn't know how to react because they weren't trained in any of that.
Yeah.
Because I know like my mom never got any help for her speech and she stuttered a lot. And then I got help finally when I was like 8, 9 years old for it. But we also had to move to a different school. So it was just really interesting how like our childhoods are everyone has very similar stories in different ways.
Yeah.
But it's like we all have stories that shape us, good, bad, and indifferent. And it's all about like looking at these stories, tearing them apart, and seeing how exactly if we really want to hang on to that, or if we really even want to let it go. So like even my story of, the of not being like stupid and not being dumb and, I am very smart. Even then there, I had to come to the conclusion, like, wait a minute. I don't need my doctorate to show people what I know. And so I don't put it on it's not on my website. It's not on my business card. Because it's not something, it's just a title. It's just something, it's a piece of paper. If that school burnt down and my, certificate or went up in flames in the same day, the only thing I would still have is the knowledge within me.
Right.
So there's no way. So why should we even worry about needing to prove to people what we know other than what we already show them? And so, Shauna, do you have another story?
I guess I have another one, but it made me become a better mother, I guess. As a child, I'm one of 7 kids. My mom had 7 kids, and the CPS came to our school one day to talk to all of us kids and stuff about my stepdad, because one of my friends, whistleblowed on me, whatever. Anyways, so CPS came to our school and interviewed us all and asked us all these questions, whatever. And when we went home, my sisters and I are like, oh my God, do we tell mom? Do we not tell mom? And so we decided to go talk to my mom, who was in her bedroom in the dark. We knocked on the door. We could tell she was crying. We walked in. She had this stupid revolver to her head. Because CPS also reached out to her to let her know there's an investigation going on. So anyways, nothing really about that. But anyways, while she was talking to us, she asked us, we had these babysitters who were really old. Like, to me, they were like in their 80s, but I think they're probably 60s, maybe 70s. Anyways, their name was Dick and Vicky. Anyways, she asked, did Dick and Vicky ever, touch you guys inappropriately, do anything? And we're all like, yeah. And she's like, I always thought so. I knew you guys, would beg me and not to bring you guys there. And so I always figured something was going on. Now, as that to me, that all the hurtful things that my mom had ever said to me, that is what broke my heart. Knowing or having the idea that you're putting all your children in that situation on purpose, night after night after night, because she was going to college. She was a single mom going to college, whatever. So I understand there's a desperation, but as a mother, I could never, ever do that to my children. So, that to me was when I knew 100% for sure I was breaking this cycle. I would never allow my children, to come anywhere near a situation like that, and not that I was a hover parent or whatever they're called, but, from, when my children were born until now, they're 20, 16 and going on 15. They've never had situations like that. We've had we lost a house to a fire and a couple houses to floods, and we've had our shit or our stuff, but nothing like that. And so that was my vow in life to the universe, that I was never going to do that to my children.
Right.
I mean, yeah, that is true. I mean, I do like how you brought it into the adulthood, because there's so many things that I learned from my childhood that I chose. Hey, my parents were never the advocate for me within the school system. And so I knew that I needed to be my kids' advocate. And, either the teacher liked me or they didn't. I didn't care. But I was going to be their advocate, and I was going to speak when they were a little bit too shy or didn't know how to use those words the right way. And so, yeah, I mean, when we go through stuff like that, we end up applying it to our adulthood. And realizing, okay, this stuff is going to change for my kids, because I don't want them to ever go through it. But yet I've also found out when I did that for my kids, I never really did the healing for myself. So it wasn't until they truly left that I fully started working on myself and really getting down deep into why things happen the way they do. So Sherry, when did the healing and that stuff all kicked in for you? And did you change it for your kids?
I think, God, I'm trying to think when that happened really. I ended up marrying a very abusive man, and I had 2 kids with him. And something just inside me rose up, and I'm like, no more. I couldn't believe that I had married someone that turned out to be an abuser, because it didn't happen until I was pregnant with my first child. And of course, I didn't know how to read red flags, So I think the first time, this is so god awful to even talk about, one of my children got kicked across the kitchen. And in that moment, I thought either I'm going to kill this SOB or I'm going to stand up and take my leave and do a whole different way of life for my kids. Because I never thought he was capable of that, I think sometimes for a lot of people that it doesn't really, you don't realize how horrific what you went through. Because I can't pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
Shania, like Tanya, but with an SH.
Yep. Thank you. Like she said, it's I don't know, you're just in survival mode. And so for me, it was seeing my own child, look at me like, oh my God, what just happened? And it was just like a deck of cards, dominoes, just everything in my life I'd ever put up with, and nobody ever stood up for me, caught up with me. And I'm thinking, this is my moment, Unfortunately, you have to see that pain in someone else before you realize how much is inside of you and you can change it.
Yeah.
That is true. So Shania, do you have any other things you want to add?
I could go on for years.
We all can.
We all have so many stories. Yes,
we do.
I to change the subject a little, to a positive thing that a positive story, I guess, to turn as a reason why I turned up where I am, I guess. My oldest son, who is 20, he is also gifted, and he is kind of the reason I started embracing my mediumship and my healings and things like that, because he's an empath, and he can also see spirit and things like that, but he wasn't aware that he was an empath. And one of his first experiences, well, I mean, he saw, orbs and different apparatuses and stuff like that beforehand. But this one time, we had a property at like 3 acres on the confluence of 2 rivers. And that's the house that burned down. But we kept our property, and he loved to go fishing there. When we bought the property, we knew that this boy, a 16-year-old boy, had committed suicide there. But when anywhere I move, I could feel spirits and stuff, and I knew that the energy there wasn't negative. So we got the house. Anyways, he was fishing there after the house was gone. We didn't live there anymore. And he called me one day and just sobbing, and he's like, "Mom, did somebody kill themselves here?" I said, yeah, but I thought that was common knowledge or whatever. And he's like, because I have all these feelings that aren't my own about, suicide. And I, he's just so sad, heavy-hearted, whatever. And at that time, I was going to Bible study at my church, a women's Bible study. And so I was receiving messages for a lot of people there. So they knew I was, gifted, or whatever you want to call it. And so when my son was having these problems with the suicide and, thoughts of this and stuff that he knew wasn't his, I reached out to my pastor. I'm like, do you know anybody around here who can help me help him? And she contacted all these pastors, and nobody knows anything about this stuff. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to have to go for it or whatever. So I had, I started tuning into my guides and his guides, and, just trying to find guidance for him. And, I did learn that, it was so easy. All he had to do is basically acknowledge the feelings, but he had to learn how to release them. And, so, I acknowledge that, you're sad, depressed, or whatever. How can I help you? Or what do you need? Or whatever. And just release that once he's done or whatever. So through that is when I started developing more of my mediumship. I had already been receiving like messenger, guidance from guides and stuff to people. But at that time is when I kind of started receiving more messages and stuff. So it was it was because of my son that I started embracing my gifts and really going for it.
Awesome.
That is awesome. So yeah, I think for me, I knew I always had gifts. My son had really a lot of gifts when he was younger. So instead of stifling them, I'd be like, oh, cool. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And it really wasn't for me until the divorce that everything came flooding back. And I think that was the moment because I did marry a guy who was very abusive mentally and emotionally. I tell people that I married my mother with a penis. And so once that was done, I felt free to actually experience and be who I was supposed to be. And so that's when my journey fully started, because I remember asking my guides when I was 2.5 years old to take away my gifts so I could survive my childhood. Because I knew I was not going to survive my childhood with them. So yeah, it was really interesting how even our thoughts and the events that we're in and the decisions we make as kids, how they affect us as adults. So Sherry, do you have any other stories?
I think probably like the death of my grandfather really changed me. And I don't even know if I can put it into words, but he was just absolutely everything. And I had him for 28 years, so I was pretty lucky. But I was finally, once I was free of that relationship, I guess, here in the 3D, I was able to get rid of the religion that I felt stuck with because of him. I was able to kind of maybe step into more of who I was, because all my life, I was afraid, what if Grandpa finds out? What if Grandpa knows about this, So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I was 28, but I was still able to then, I don't know, like I've always had mediumship experiences and stuff like that happen. And I just kind of pushed them aside because they were so real to me. I didn't even think about them. But shortly after Grandpa died, stuff started happening more and more. And I think it was the catalyst for me to walk away from rigid thought processes more,
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was a good relationship, there were some things there that probably weren't so good that I allowed.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I mean, I'm sure there's things like, that I allow a little bit too long or too often. What people don't know and realize that when somebody stutters, their frontal lobe does not develop like everyone else's.
Oh, wow.
And so my frontal lobe did not fully develop until after I went to college and had kids. Because I had to go back and actually was reading my kids the preschool and beginner books that allowed my brain to actually start to develop. Because even though I made it through school and I graduated college with a 3.7, I couldn't comprehend whatever I was reading for shit. And, so when people look at me, they're like, oh, he's stuttering, don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, you need to worry about it. That's going to affect him a lot longer than you think. And that's actually the conversation I was having with one of my clients, because she was a speech therapist. And she was like, wow, I didn't even realize that they don't develop. I'm like, yeah, no. Take it from somebody who, was there. I had to go back and read my kids' preschool books. in order to, and that's the one other thing that I changed for my kids, because my kids never stuttered. And I don't know, it's because I read to them early on, or what it was, because like my mom stuttered, I stuttered, my brothers did not. Neither one of my kids did. But I know my mom never read to us. And so I was like, no, language is very important. And in order to get the language, they need to read and be read to. Because they need to know what words sound like. And so I would read to them nightly. That way they would understand, even from the minute they were conceived. From the minute I knew I was pregnant with them, I was reading to them out loud. That way everything was developing the way it was supposed to. For when they were born and they, entered into this beautiful world of ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just interesting how our events that we go through, how they shape us and how we hang on to things. And I know we all have those things that we hang on to. I'm still trying to release a few. So, one of the things that I knew, that I always knew of, I knew I was never the victim. Oh, we lost someone. Knew I was never the victim. And I knew that talking about my story was not going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
Until I can talk about it in a third person, like I'm the side, talking about completely in a different way. So I never wanted to see or speak to a psychologist, because all they have you do is have you tell them their story.
Right.
And I just knew, intuitively, if I tell my story over and over and over again without having the emotions of it totally gone, it's going to become who I am. And I didn't want that. And so when I was looking for healing and everything else, that's when my guides showed me the Akashic records and how to go in and help release the negative emotions without having to talk about it, without having to relive it. And so I was like, sweet, this is awesome. I love it. So Sherry, what led you to your gifts in your journey?
Well, I don't know, because I can remember in diapers almost seeing spirits and having words for people that how the heck would I know, that kind of stuff. But honestly, probably after my divorce, and it was a lot of brutal stuff happened to me. I started going to a church that had revival and that kind of stuff. And so for me, it wasn't a religious awakening, because I'd walked away from a religion already. It was more of a spiritual awareness. And I was sitting in church one time, and I don't know, the pastor said something about a Bible verse, like those that are set free are free indeed, something to that effect. And all of a sudden it just hit me, like I'm the one holding myself back. I'm the one that, can change all of this and allow this. But the churches didn't know what to do with my spiritual gifts. And so I met my friend, Misty Stinson, and she's kind of the one that was kind of helping me understand what was going on and how to get through it, and how to take better care of myself so that, you can kind of help facilitate that better. And I really have to credit my good friend there, because otherwise I wouldn't have really known what to do with it. Because, the rest of the world tells you, oh, that's evil, it's wrong, it's all this crazy stuff, that it's not. And I had to learn how to totally rethink all that. So sorry, that was a lengthy answer, but
No, it's all good. We have time. So, Shania, how did you fully come into your gifts through your childhood?
So, like I said, growing up, well, maybe I didn't say, growing up, our house always had activity, but it was activity of the negative sort because of, just my mom was, obviously mentally ill. My dad was mentally ill. They're both gone now, both died of addictions. And, there was a lot of abuse and stuff. So the ghosts, we call, the ghosts in our house were always like bad spirits and stuff. So we didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to them because if you give them attention, then they become a little more, troublemaking. So it wasn't really, I didn't embrace it as a kid. I mean, we all, knew there were spirits in the house or whatever, but, and we were kids too, and we're dumb, and we'd play with Ouija boards and stuff like that because we did know about spirits a little bit and that they're around us and stuff. So, we played with them a little bit here and there, but, I didn't embrace my gifts as a child. We weren't really, I was too busy surviving, I guess. I did go into foster care when I was 13. And I remember when I was 16, at this one foster parent's house, who lived out in the country, I was just so depressed and so alone, and I thinking about suicide and stuff. And I was out in the picnic table in the back, and it's overlooking this huge, beautiful coulee. And I was just sitting on the picnic table, with my hands over my face in my hands, just bawling and asking God, why aren't you here with me? Why aren't you, just so sad. Anyways, all of a sudden I heard the words, "I am here," and it scared me, and I thought it was my foster dad. And I picked up my head and looked, and there was nobody there. And then I felt just this warm energy around me, just this huge energy hug, and at that point I knew I was, okay, and that it was God that I heard. And then I went inside to use the bathroom and, to wash my face and, just kind of freshen up a little bit. And I accidentally tripped on this coffee table or whatever it was, which had a hunting magazine. But this magazine fell open, and it had this beautiful locket that had the footprints prayer in it. When you only see one set of footprints, I'm carrying you,
Right.
That one or whatever. And it just all came together. And at that point, I just knew I was okay. And that's kind of when I started letting my guard down a little bit to allow myself to heal, allow God in. And that's kind of when I started getting more intuition about people, about things, about, I started receiving messages for people. And so when I was about 16 or so, God just kind of just smacked me and said, I'm here, open up so you can receive, basically, or whatever. And so, yeah, that's kind of as a child when I started embracing my gifts ish.
Cool. I think there's been several times within my adulthood that they tried to have me embrace my gifts. So I remember before I was even married, I had my first tarot deck, and dabbling with it and playing with it. As a child, I had that Ouija board, and just never really, I don't know, it's just like with people around me at that time, it was like, no, you can't do this. No, that's not right. That's not. And it wasn't like when the divorce happened for me and I moved, I was actually living in Colorado where all these naysayers that this was not okay and everything was not around me. And so I was like going, oh, I found a totally new set of friends, new people who supported it. That they truly say that when you're ready, the teacher's going to come. Mm-hmm. And everything's going to fall into place. But you have to be truly ready. And sometimes it's ready is also not in that same environment. Because if I was this last summer back here, I've been doing my gifts. I didn't care what my brother thought. I didn't care what my mom thought, whatever. But I think if it was back then, I don't know if I would have really ever came into my gifts. And truly embrace them, because I would have had those negative words and trying to still fit in when I've always known I was not made to fit in. I mean, I broke that mold a long time ago.
Yeah, I never care what people think about me. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. But it's kind of cool, like Sherry was saying with the domino effect, everything's in God's timing, and one thing happens in order for the next thing to happen, and it just kind of, snowballs, and it's just amazing when you look back in your timeline where you were when certain things happened, and where you had to go for other things to happen and stuff. And it's really cool to look at that timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. So Sherry, do you have another story?
Yeah, I guess so. Before I was afraid to come out of the closet as a medium, because not only did I have the psychic stuff, I had the mediumship stuff, and I was ignoring it. So I kept having these, I don't know, I've heard them called disembodied spirits. I don't know, ghosts,
That's what
whatever.
I
I
call
don't know. Okay. Well, they kept coming to me and bugging me. And I mean, bugging me, because I was trying to ignore them. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. And I kept praying that God would take the gift away. And instead it kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And so finally I'm like, this has to be my answer, because, So I remember sitting on the edge of my bed one day, and I'm like, okay, universe, I give up. I accept all of this, but I'm not going to accept any of the spooky stuff. Like what she said, I used to live in haunted houses too. Like I just want to be able to help people and become a healer. And that's kind of when it happened. Unfortunately, be careful what you ask for, because I ended up having plantar fasciitis for 3 years. And most of my time was on a couch, because I physically could not walk, hardly. And it was interesting how much time on my hands that I had. And I was studying all this stuff, and I was, really stepping into it and embracing it finally. But it took, my health just falling apart completely on me on several different things before. It was almost like, God and everybody on the other side was like, okay, now we have your attention. Now we can work with you. Because before I was too busy working midnights and raising kids, and I was still doing stuff at church and things, but I needed to just be on my butt with 2 ears wide open and a heart open to it too. So not much fun, but I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all had those stories too, like, where we're always just down and out, to where it's like we're being forced to, hey, now that you have the time, let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster with a lot of derails.
Yes. It is never like this easy, smooth ride.
No.
The spiritual journey is full of ups and downs.
Yeah, you don't grow when you're content.
Right, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was just having that conversation yesterday too with somebody. It's like, when we're too content, we do not grow. But yet, you got to have that balance too, because you want to have that safety and security, right? But if you're not growing, the universe is not going to give you that safety and security, because you're not willing to learn and grow in other areas and change in other areas. And so it's like, you got to figure out, like, okay, if I'm going to grow here, I need this, like this house, this place to live in, so I can grow and do this. And so that's been an interesting concept too, to go, or is that when you read books and you grow, because I've seen this a lot too, where people are like constantly, like, they're reading those self-help books over and over and over and over again. And they're going from one book to the next book, to the next book, to the next book. And that's all they're doing is reading. And they're not stopping to see how they can apply any of those concepts to their life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Self-help books are great. But if you're not applying any of the concepts to your life, all you're doing is passing time.
Right.
Because you have to stop and go, oh, how does this apply to me? How can this work within my world, within my life? Every book we read, every book, has that one or two concepts that we can apply to our life. Does not matter how many pages are in that book. There's always that one concept that goes, aha, that's it. That's what I need to do. And for me, usually when I get to that one concept, that first concept, I stop reading the book. I'm like, okay, got it, done.
Of course you do.
Right. So, Shania, how do you get your information to transform your business and your life? Like, does it just come to you? Do you get it in books? Do you have aha? I mean, we all have aha moments, but how do they come to you?
I'm not a big reader. I can make the time. I just tell myself I don't have time, so I don't read. I'm lazy that way. A lot of how I learn is through my clients. A lot of, there's a whole lot of practice what I preach type stuff, but the guidance that comes through for my clients, so much of it I can learn from too, that I can apply to my own life. So I would say that the more I practice my gifts, the more I learn through spirit. I mean, it's amazing how every day I'm learning something, and well, not every day, but most days I'm learning something, and I learn the most through helping others. It's amazing the information you get when you allow that information to just come through.
Right.
So that's I guess where I learn the most is through spirit.
Well, awesome. Sherry, do you have anything else to add today?
No, I think, if people are going through this, I think meditation, and if you're a praying person, but I think meditation, there's different ones that I like to go onto YouTube to kind of work through things, and guided meditations. That's where I have a lot of like life-changing things happen, and like what you said also, like with your clients, but it seems like for me, it's a lot of spirit. Like when I'm ready, I just kind of do the next thing maybe. But meditation really helps with that.
Meditation, connecting to your source. For women, it's our uterus.
Yeah.
So yeah, the second chakra is our source. And it really does help to calm us down, relax, connect, create. Creation is very important. And I liked how Sherry kind of talked about a little bit on the creating part when she was younger a little bit, because this is one thing I've talked about with before is that kids know exactly how they need to create their world when they come into this world.
Yeah.
And it's us, the adults in their lives, that stifle them and tell them that how they create is not okay. And this is why kids are so creative until about the age of 10. I mean, if they can stay that creative until 10, they're going to know exactly how to create their adult life without being stifled. I mean, I think kids are thrown in school way too early, and it really does stifle them, because kids need to be creative. They need to connect to that second chakra, which is developing between the ages of 7 to 14, in order to know exactly how they're going to be able to create their adult life.
Right.
And that is so important for them to fully have that. And yeah, we all have a different way of creating. We all have a different way of moving through this world. Not one is right or wrong. However you move through this world, however you create, is perfect for you. Like some people can do the law of attraction, and some people can do affirmations, and some people can't. That stuff just doesn't work for them, and that's okay too. So when I hear people going, oh, you got to do affirmations, but affirmations don't work for me. Oh, then you got to do a vision board. Okay, I've done vision boards. I've never seen anything happen from them. But when I sit down and I talk to somebody and I speak what I want, it shows up.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and we all have that different way of manifesting. And we all need to honor how we create and manifest. And we need to stop stifling our children. They are the future. So, Shania, do you have any last parting words?
Way to put me on the spot. I would
I've
say,
never done that to anyone.
just, I mean, don't use your life as an excuse. Use your life for a reason. Embrace the good and the bad, because it all makes you who you are. And ignoring one part doesn't help you, and it just kind of actually damages you. And just embrace who you are, and embrace everything that's happened, because everything happens for a reason. It's that domino effect. What happened 2 years ago might tomorrow you might have the aha, that's why it happened or whatever. So just go with the flow and don't fight the universe.
Right. So, ladies, how can they get a hold of each of us? I know for me, you can get a hold of me on the Mystical Mindset group page. And you can get a hold of me on healingwithmichelleadams.com, which is my website. Sherry, how can they get a hold of you?
Right now, it's Spirit Closure with Sherry on Facebook, or Mama Huss, MOMMHUSS 72 at Gmail.
And Shania, how can they get a hold of you?
For me, you can look me up on Facebook, Shania Meland, MELAND, or I also have Soul Therapy on Facebook, and that's my my holistic office, basically, for online.
All right, you guys. And if internet and Facebook and everything goes down again, look for Majestic Michelle on Telegram. I am there. All right. Because, it already went down once. Who knows?
Yeah.
What's in for the world ride right now? So, you guys, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
A blessed day, everyone out there.